Hi everyone. Hello and welcome to this session on crafting a marketing career, or even before that, helping you understand a little bit about the choices that you have if you don't want to wish either an MBA or a core specialization. My name is Varun, and before I get into the heart of the matter, I just thought that I'll take a minute to get the other people in as well. We're going to have, the intent of these discussions is to have kind of a, even though I'm speaking for the most of it, the intent is to get in your questions in as well. And so what I will do is I'll play before, to ensure that everyone is in before we sort of get into the heart of the matter. I thought I'll play a video for you, which is of an ad that I enjoyed. I do a fair amount of ad analysis, but before, and I saw an ad actually that I was really sort of curious or that sort of really interested me, and I wanted to break it down, but someone else actually beat me to it and did a far better job than I could have analyzing that ad, even if the intent of that analysis was different for him. I'm just going to play the video in, and then we're going to start in about a minute after that. I think you're going to enjoy this video.
Take. Now, finally this week, Lithuania, or as it's more commonly known, I don't know, one of the Polands maybe. Now, Lithuania's capital city is Vilnius, and not many people know much about it, which is why it launched a daring tourism campaign this week. And I could tell you about it, but I think it's probably better that you just watch it for yourself. That's real. That is real. The new tourism campaign of Vilnius is Vilnius, the G-spot of Europe. And if you're thinking, why is Vilnius the G-spot of Europe, which admittedly sounds like a riddle on a popsicle stick you'd find in Roman Polanski's freezer, well, according to this actual poster from the campaign, it's because nobody knows where it is, but when you find it, it's amazing. And look, that logic, I've got to give it to them. That logic is incredible, but by that logic, it also means that Vilnius is the Waldo of Europe, the Jeremy Piven's hairline of Europe, and the ID channel of Europe. Did you know the ID channel has a show called Wives with Knives? And another one called Southern Fried Homicide? And another one called Bride Killer, that's killer with an A, all on ID. And I realise no one knows where that channel is, but when you find it, it's amazing. It's basically the Vilnius of basic cable. Now look, it's clearly a bold tone for an official tourism campaign, and some in the national government were not exactly thrilled with it for a very short time.
Anyway, so let's get to the heart of the matter. I'm going to quickly get on to 5 points today with you guys. The first point I'm going to cover is a little bit about an MBA, but I'm only going to focus on 2 questions. Both of those questions are related to stuff that you have already wrote down in as stuff that you wanted to know about. So I'm going to address 2 things which I think are not said enough of. Certainly the first one is definitely not said enough of. I'm going to cover a little bit about what are the different kind of domains that you can have outside or inclusive of the MBA in the industry itself. I'm going to talk far more about the marketing function in terms of what specifically it is and what is the kind of work that you do, what are the kind of careers that you have. I'm going to go into how you can get a job in marketing straight after campus. And I'm going to speak from the context of off-campus recruitment, because if the job is coming to you on campus, it's obviously very simple. You apply for it, but most times you don't really get a marketing job on campus. That's the general thing. A few companies do offer it. I think Google offers a role in marketing, but there are not too many companies that go on campus to recruit. But off campus, obviously, a lot of recruitment happens. And then I'm going to share a couple of final thoughts in terms of how you can choose and build a fantastic career. Again, something that I don't think is said enough of. And in fact, to the contrary, I don't think it is said at all on the campuses. All right, so let's get to the heart of the matter. The way this slide deck is structured is that there is a myth and there is a truth, which is this entire presentation is structured through a myth and a truth. What that essentially means is that I'm going to show a myth to you. This myth could be true or it could be false, right? So myth is a commonly believed statement. It could be true, it could be somewhat true, it could be false, right? So that's the context here, and we're going to talk a little bit about what I think about that myth, right? So let's get to the first myth. So the first myth, commonly believed statement, is the fact that MBA helps you learn about business, right? It absolutely does teach you a little bit about business. There are many ways to learn about business. So MBA is not the only way to learn about business. A lot of people will argue that you, in the 2 years that you spend, you can doing business can also teach you a lot about it. That's fundamentally there. If I look at the world's largest companies, most of the CEOs do not have an MBA. That's true today. It was true even 10 years ago. It was true even 20 years ago. So a lot of the great companies are founded by non-MBAs, right? There are a few MBAs which are there as well. So it's not as if the MBA is a detriment to your career. And yet it is one of the most aspirational jobs that are there, even though at the highest level, it doesn't really sort of make that much of a difference. The reason is that while the MBA may not sort of take you to the absolute top of the peak, it does do one thing really well, which is that it protects your downside. Because the reason that the MBA exists is because it provides large companies with a ready pool of talent from which they could hire from. So the best way to understand the role of an MBA is to look at it from the point of view of a recruiter, someone who's going to hire people. Let's say there is an organization and it runs, and let's say an organization of 10,000 people. To run an organization of 10,000 people, you need hundreds of managers, and often there is churn. So each year you need hundreds of managers. Now, if you're going to be hiring, let's say 100 managers every year, it becomes very difficult for you to keep hiring them from the industry. Almost all large organizations prefer to hire young people and groom them in their business. That's been the traditional way. Now, to identify young people who can do well in these large organizations is the role of an MBA, right? And so the biggest thing that you can get by getting an MBA is that you can signal to a recruiter. You can tell a recruiter by getting into the MBA that you are someone who has discipline, commitment, and a reasonable level of smartness, right? So when it comes to an MBA, what most people sort of miss the point is that it doesn't exactly work like an undergraduate degree works. In an undergraduate degree, it's not just important what the signaling to the recruiter is, it is also important what you learn from that undergraduate degree. In the MBA, it is highly critical where you do that MBA from, because at the end of the day, it is the hardest part about the MBA is actually getting in, right? When you're in, it is still pretty hard, but it does not compare to how hard it is to actually get into the MBA. And I'm talking about among the top colleges, right? Which is why, if you really look at the salaries of average salaries of MBA colleges versus, let's say, let's pick a popular undergraduate degree. So let's look at engineering, for example, right? So the top college in an MBA is IIM Ahmedabad. The average salary is about 25 lakhs, right? Now, if I look at the 20th college in the MBA list, the average salary there would be not even 50% of that. It'll be less than 40% of that, right? The 20th college. I'm not even going to the 50th, the 100th, or the 1000th college. But if I compare it to an engineering college, right, and say, what is the best engineering college? Let's say IIT Delhi or IIT Bombay, right? Average salary about 11 lakhs. If I go to the 20th, I would still go to a college like, let's say, an NIT Surathkal. And that's a very good engineering college, right? You'd have a pretty decent salary. And so therefore, what you would understand is that while in undergrad, it's not just about where you do the degree about, it's also about what you learn from it, your stream, etc. when it comes to an MBA, it becomes very important that you get into the right institution, right? Because the signaling to the recruiter comes from how hard it was to get into the recruiter, right? That's something which is very important for you to consider in. The second thing I want to talk about an MBA, and these are the only 2 points I want to talk about right now, but I will take in your questions about the MBA program if you do have, is the myth that it's better to have a work ex before you go for an MBA. In my head, I think it is true for the most part. I do think that from a learning point of view, from what you grasp from the concepts, it's better to it's better to work for a little bit. But just to take the thing from the just to take it forward from the previous point of view, the best MBA institutions that you should consider should not just be the Indian institutions, which are good, but you should consider the global institutions as well, which are often better reputed, right? So what an MBA is better than anything else that you can get in India from a reputation point of view. And so there are a lot of MBA programs in INSEAD, for example. There's some great institutions which only take in students with work ex. Yeah, and so therefore that's something which that you should consider in. When it comes to Indian institutions, they also tend to prefer people with work ex. So increasingly, the trend has been towards getting people with a little bit of work experience, right? So it is possible, it is possible that you can write CAT and you can get a great score, and on the back of that great score, you can also crack the interview and the GD and whatever, and you can get into a very good MBA. If you can do that, it's fantastic. But if you don't, then that's completely fine. Most people today work a little bit before they go into. Although what I think a lot of people get it wrong is the fact that they get a lot of they get jobs which are essentially not very useful from an MBA point of view, because a lot of the jobs tend to be, if you're an engineer, for example, you're going to get into a coding job 7 out of 10 times, and then that, if you don't want to do coding, then it becomes a bit of a mismatch, and so therefore that work ex doesn't count for a lot. But if you can get into a related job, then do an MBA from a very good institution, that is the best formula that you can come up with, right? So it depends a little bit about the program and the campuses, but in general, it helps. All right, now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to be talking a little bit about the domains that are available to you. These are domains which are available regardless of what degree you're taking up. Even post MBA, these are the only domains that are there, right? And obviously, I've simplified things a little bit because I've wanted to present the full gamut. There is some simplification which is there, but I think that it will be useful for us to see the context in which your options exist, and then get down to the option that I can most help you with, which is marketing. Yeah, so I'm just going to get to it. I'm just going to reiterate here that if you have questions, please please put it down on the chat window, and I'll try and address them either as we go along or at the end, right? I will address every single question that you guys ask. So please don't worry about that. Just put in the questions there, and I will get to it as soon as I can. All right, so let's quickly get into the domains bit, right? In terms of what are the options that are available. So the first option and the most prominent option today is technology, and a lot of you get into, if you're engineers, even sometimes non-engineers, get into these kind of roles. One value-added role which has come up in the last 5 to 7 years is product management, which is a role that combines technology with a little bit of user understanding and design understanding. It's a highly value-additive role. It's a role that usually doesn't you usually do not get it straight after college. You need a little bit of work ex, you need a little bit of familiarity before you can get into this. But most engineers, top-end engineers, prefer to get into product management after a few years, because it's a rich role, and it's something that I think will only grow in the future. Then, of course, there are a lot of finance roles which exist, right? So there is core finance, which is the technical finance roles. And then there is what we call the soft finance, which is roles which require you to have finance knowledge, but actually are either operations or sales and marketing roles, right? So they are in a bank or they're in a financial institution, but the real meat of the job is not in the technical finance of it. It is just in the sales of it, or in the operations of it, stuff like that, or in the marketing of it, for that matter, right? So finance can be split into hard finance or technical finance and soft finance, right? Those are the two differentiations which are there, and a lot of roles exist there. Marketing and sales I'm going to talk about in some detail, so I'm going to skip this. Operations is fairly well understood, right? So if you guys have a fest in your college, and let's say you're doing a professional night, you're inviting a celebrity band, or a celebrity singer. Let's say you invite Farhan Akhtar to your college, right, for your college fest. There's a whole host of things that you'll have to do in order to organize it, right? Tickets have to be booked. The stage has to be set up. The infra for the stage has to be set up. The infra that he will require, the transportation of him from the college to from the airport to the college, where he will stay, where his team will stay, and what kind of needs that they will have, who's going to manage the operations of of the crowd, and what they're going to need, and so on and so forth, right? So the whole host of operations. Now that's at a college level, right? So that's an operational at a college level. In an industry level, it works something like this. So I used to work for the Maggie Noodles brand. And while I was on the marketing side, there was a supply chain team there, right? And they had a very complex job to do, because each day, Maggie would be sold in lakhs per day, right? So imagine lakhs of outlets selling lakhs of packets of noodles every day. Right now, there are many factories. Those factories will have many kind of sourcing, which is there. Then the factory produces it. Then you have to take it there in the right condition, freshness, etc. Right. So it's a very complicated thing, which is done by people who essentially are very good at operations. Then there's HR. There are not a lot of jobs in HR, but there will always be jobs in HR, because wherever there are human beings, they need to be managed, and so therefore HR comes in. If you have any specific questions on HR, I'm happy to address. Otherwise, I'll move on to the last two, which is consulting and the creative domain. So from a consulting point of view, it's not exactly a domain, because what happens is you can become a consultant in any domain, right? You can be an operation consultant, HR consultant, strategy, technology, finance consultant. But usually, if you want to do consulting, an MBA is a better thing for you to do, because when you work with clients, they like to know that they're working with smart people, and MBA, as I said, is a good signal to potential clients and recruiters. So a lot of consultants get hired straight out of MBA, but you can become a consultant even without it as well. But it would be preferable for you to get an MBA. And then there is the creative function, something which used to be not very prominent from a job point of view. So if you wanted to write, maybe 10 years ago, your parents might say that's not a very good career to sort of go. If you wanted to design, that was not a very promising career to get into 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 30 years ago. Today, that scene is shifted drastically. There is high demand for creative folks, and you can understand why that is happening, because as automation is taking over the operational work, the real differentiation is coming in the creative on the creative side, right? So at Kraftshala, we've sort of we've been happily sort of hiring people who are creative day in and day out, because the truth is that that's one thing which imagination is one thing which is not yet automated, and so therefore there is high value for it. And there are lots and lots of creative functions that exist in, right? So even within marketing, I can say that content writing is kind of a creative thing, right? I mean, you're writing content for a specific objective, so it still comes in marketing, but being creative is an important aspect of it. All right, so let's get into the marketing bit. And what I want to do right now, instead of explaining to you how marketing functions, what I wanted to do was to present to you exactly how a problem would come to a marketing person, right? And I wanted to take an example that's something that you and I will be familiar with, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to assume that you are a marketing person. You're part of the Make My Trip team, and your job is to grow business for Make My Trip. Right now, if you look at the Make My Trip business, you can split it very simply under flights, hotels, trains, and other businesses. Right, that's where the business lies in. Now, let's say that because flights is the largest business right now for Make My Trip, let's say you want to start with flights. Right Now, within flights, there are domestic flight bookings and international flight bookings, right? And in domestic flights, you can understand that there's high competition and there's not a lot of money that you can make in, it is the largest aspect of the business. But let's say, that's not something where you see a lot of opportunity. But international flights are something which are growing, right? It's a small segment, but it is growing quickly. More Indians now travel abroad. And you think that there is an opportunity there, right? And so your boss, let's say the CEO of the company, asks you to drive international flights, right? And so your goal is to drive growth in the international flight segment. Now, the job that you have to do essentially, first up, is to understand how you can take users who are booking international flights and get them to book it on your platform, right? So the first point to understand is the fact that you're not going to convince people necessarily to go international as of now. You could be able to do that, but the easiest opportunity will be that first you get people in who are already booking international flights but are not using Make My Trip. You can take those users who use other platforms but not Make My Trip, or you can take in users from those users who are actually using these agents. Yeah, so they're not actually going to an online platform, they're going to agents and booking flights, right? And so your job then is to figure out why is it that people today are going to agents to book flights, international flights, when they easily book domestic flights and not coming to a platform like Make My Trip, right? And as you talk to your users, you could understand that the reason that people are traveling or the reason that people are choosing agents is simply because they believe that agents can give them best prices for international travel. Whether that this is true or false is a different aspect altogether. This is the insight that you have discovered, that people fundamentally believe that they can get better prices for through agents, right? Now, the first thing that you have to do is to make sure that that's not true, and that will not be true, right? On the Make My Trip platform or any other online travel platform, there are so many choices available that mostly it is best that that you'll always find the best prices online. You'll never be able to find it physically because those prices are getting updated real time. So almost certainly Make My Trip has a role to play here. Yeah, but you still need to communicate that, right? And this is where the marketing comes in. So let me show you the ad that these guys ran some time ago, and I think that you're going to enjoy this one. Have a look.
अच्छा सुन, where do you think Sam is from? पता करे? Sam, तुम्हारी वो पेरिस वाली बुकिंग हो गई?
Of course. I have a friend who always does my international flights and hotel bookings. Why do you ask?
नहीं, MMT पे कुछ अच्छे deals चल रहे थे तो.
Really? भैंस की आँख.
दिल्ली का है.
कौन बोल रहा है? तेरा बाप बोल रहा है.
सॉरी सर, बट सिर्फ मेक माई ट्रिप पर मिलते हैं बेस्ट डील्स ऑन इंटरनेशनल फ्लाइट्स एंड होटल्स. इसलिए इंटरनेशनल ट्रिप ओनली विद मेक माई ट्रिप.
All right, so it's a fun ad, and I think that, and you can see now why it is that they have launched that particular campaign, right? Similarly, you can also, just to sort of complete this example, you can also look at not just flights as a source of growth when you're working for Make My Trip, but hotels as well, right? Now, the thing about flights and hotels is the fact that platforms like Make My Trip make very little margins from flights, right? Because most of the money is actually made by the airline. But when it comes to hotels, the margins are actually much higher. So if you book, if you book 2,000 rupees or whatever, 10,000 rupees of flight or 10,000 rupees of hotels, the actual money that Make My Trip will make from the flight will be very different than the money that it makes from the hotel. Most of the margins are sitting in hotels. So all platforms want to specifically drive hotels, right? And so that could be a potential growth area that you can understand, that you can identify, right? And once again, once you identify it, you figure out, where the growth opportunity is and how you can really tap that growth opportunity, right? So you go and talk to your users to see why is it that people are not booking hotels online but are just using someone in the network or something to book hotels, right? So you talk to a few families, to people typically in the middle class, maybe tier 2, tier 3 towns, something like that, right? And the insight that you come up with is the fact that, one of the major challenges that people face online when they're booking hotels is the fact that they don't trust that that what is seen on the website, whether it is the imagery, whether it is the promises, whether those hotels will actually deliver on that, right? Because most hotels put up some really decked up images rather than very realistic images, right? And same for services, right? Often you don't get the exact thing that they promised you on the website, right? And so that's the trust that people lack once they book book hotels, right? Now, once you've identified that insight, you can begin to address that insight, right? So I'm just going to give you an example of how this is addressed. Yeah. So
Happy?
भाड़ में गया हैप्पी, तू दोस्त का होटल होते हुए भी इस होटल में ठहरी है।
Happy?
नहीं, क्या है क्या इस होटल में?
ऐसे रूम्स हैं।
पिंकी तू बड़ी बोली है यार। ऐसे फोटोज तो हम भी लगाते हैं, पर हाथी के दांत दिखाने के और होते हैं और खाने के।
Happy?
Don't touch. हैप्पी जी, नए मेक माई ट्रिप अश्योर्ड होटल्स में सिर्फ बढ़िया रूम्स ही नहीं, 24 आवर हॉटलाइन भी मिलता है। होटल्स लुक कर, बेफिक्र बुक कर।
all right, so that's a little bit on the marketing function. Now, quick difference between marketing and sales. Marketing essentially is persuasion at scale. What does that mean? It means that when you're trying to persuade tens of thousands of people or sometimes millions of people in one go, that's where marketing plays a role in. Sales, on the other hand, is persuasion at a one-on-one level. When someone is trying to convince something on a one-to-one fashion, that's what typically sales is called, right? So while the base theoretical knowledge that you need could be similar in some ways, actually it gets applied a little differently because people who like concepts, people who are sort of okay with technology, or people who are okay with certain levels of abstractions, creativity, etc., marketing is a great function for them. People who love to sort of work with people to get people excited, love those one-to-one connections, they typically tend to do very well in sales. Now, that's not to say that you don't get both in the others. It's not as if you don't get one-to-one connection in marketing or you don't get concepts in sales. It's not exclusive. But if you want to choose between marketing and sales, that's where the skewness happens. All right, so let's get to a couple of other things here as well. So let me start with this myth. A CEO needs to be a great manager. To be honest, in my experience, and this is a very personal view, I haven't seen that as a necessity. I think it helps to be a great manager as a CEO for sure. But what is for sure needed as a necessity is for the CEO to be a great sales and marketing professional, right? I mean, that is an absolute given. So you take someone like Steve Jobs, or you take someone like Elon Musk. These guys are absolutely fantastic at being able to pitch their companies and their products to different kinds of stakeholders, right? And in fact, these two images that I've also chosen are essentially images in respectively where they individually have been fantastic. So if I look at Steve Jobs, his great marketing acumen, amongst other things, would come up through in the conferences that they would do, when they're doing these annual conferences where they would launch new products. His presentation, his ability to really sense the pulse of the audience, his whole persona was fantastic, right? And Elon Musk, I don't know if you guys saw this, but he was, he got into a little bit of trouble for smoking pot on one of the podcasts that he was doing. But he's outstanding in general at using these kind of stunts in order to garner attention, right? Tesla, the company that he runs, doesn't do a lot of classical marketing. And in absence of that, it is actually Elon Musk really, which serves as the marketing powerhouse behind the firm, right? And so both these individuals are representative of this need of all CEOs in order to run their companies. They need to be able to sell to their employees, sell to their board members, sell to the general public, and so on and so forth. All right, so let's get to the job roles in marketing. This is the hard part of how do you really build a career in marketing. There are different kinds of roles. So there's the brand management role, typically not available immediately after college, but it's one of the best roles to have. So the Make My Trip example that I was taking, that communication that was made, the ads, they were made by brand managers, right? And so that's something which you could perhaps get into a few years later. Digital marketing is something that you can absolutely access straight after college as well. And there are a whole host of things within digital marketing that exist. There's marketing research, which is also something that you can access straight after college. Content writing, I spoke or I mentioned it a little bit, is something which has also come up. And client management is essentially a little bit of a combination of marketing and sales, where you have to manage the clients in addition to understanding concepts in marketing. All right, so then the question comes in: how do you land a job in marketing if you're sitting in campus, right? So let me first tell you how you should not apply for jobs, right? This is an example that you should not follow in, right? So a lot of people who write into me when they're asking for jobs essentially have no specific reason why I should hire them, right? And one of the things that I hope you take out of this session is something called user centricity, where every time that you are, every time that you're actually every time that you are conversing with someone, you have to come from their perspective and address that perspective in before you can go forward. And so think about it this way: that instead of thinking about this context of from your perspective that you need a job, you have to come from their perspective, the recruiter's perspective, and why should they be hiring you? That is really the question that you should really be answering in, right? So let me tell you what recruiters most care about, okay? And I want you to pay attention on this one. Recruiters most care about intent and potential once they are hiring for once they're hiring undergraduate students, right? Potential comes through when essentially through the process that they run. But oftentimes it's not potential that matters a lot, because a lot of people have the requisite level of smartness to do the job. What they lack is a requisite level of intent, a requisite level of commitment to do a job, right? So take, for example, the fact that you want to get into a job in marketing, right? And you are interested in that. And let's say that your previous undergrad has nothing to do with, your undergrad essentially has nothing to do with marketing. The way you can signal intent to a recruiter is by actually doing a project in marketing or doing an internship in marketing that will solve this purpose, right? Because there's nothing stronger than actually coming and being true to your word, right? So it's very cheap for people to say, I'm interested in marketing, but it costs something when you don't do other things and you actually go ahead and do a project in marketing, or a series of projects in marketing, or even better, an internship in marketing, right? And so therefore, if you're sitting right now in college, what I would actively recommend you to do is to figure this thing out, right? And when you're writing when you're trying to get a job or an internship in marketing, I want you to make sure, and ideally an internship, do not hesitate to sort of connect directly with companies, right? So because you want a little bit of learning, what I see is a lot of people on undergrad, they're hesitant to write directly to companies, right? And they use platforms like Shala and so on and so forth in order to get some kind of an internship, or they depend if they're going to get some kind of internships on campus itself. While that could work for some people, the best jobs and the best internships are not available on that platform. The best way to do it is to do a little bit of research, figure out what are the companies that you could potentially do an internship in, and then write to those companies. The more number of companies that you write to, the better it is. A lot of the times you can write to them on their LinkedIn. You can figure out who the leadership in the company is, let's say the marketing head or someone, and you can write to them on LinkedIn, right? And a lot of them will respond. You want to play the numbers game here, so don't just write to 5 people, write to 50 people. Maybe 10 of them will reply, and maybe 2 or 3 of them will interview you, and that should be enough for you to crack an internship, right? So whenever you're applying for a job or an internship, please make sure that you go the full head forward, and do not be hesitant in doing that. It's easier to land an internship this way than it is a job, right? A job can still sort of be a little bit of a challenge, but it is easier to land an internship that way. The second option that you have, in case that doesn't work, or in case that is not possible for you in some way or the other, is to join an online program, right? Now there are lots of online courses in marketing that exist. Most of them just teach you a little bit of marketing. What you really want to do is to pick a program that has projects which are built into it, right? Either they give you the projects, or they make those projects accessible to you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Kraftshala program here as a quick brief, because I want to come back to a couple of very important points as well. In addition to this, the Marketing Accelerator program is the first program that we've ever launched for undergrad students. And the reason that it exists is because while a lot of people do marketing from an MBA, we thought that a lot of people might still be interested in doing marketing even before they get into an MBA, or even if they don't want to do an MBA. So the thought is that you select these high potential students and expose them to projects, and expose them to the right kind of content and mentorship, and then expose job opportunities for them, whether they are job or internship opportunities, whatever it is relevant. So those in pre-final year tend to sort of prefer internships. Those in final year prefer to get jobs straight out of this program, right? And those jobs come to you based on the kind of assessment performance that you give into the program. But let's say that you take a report card home, a CGPA card or report card home, right? And this is how the report card looks like, right? So there are 6 subjects, and you get grade A in one of them, and 2 Bs and 2 Cs and 1 D, right? You take this home. What subjects do you think will get discussed most, right? And the answer to that is obviously subject 6, right? Because that's where you seem to have failed the most, right? So depending on the ambition of your parents, they'll start with D, and then they'll go up to C, and they'll go up to B. And if they go up to A, the only thing that they will say is, well, this is fine, but look at where you are in the rest of it, and can you improve this, right? Now, let's change the context a little bit, right? Let's say that I come to your campus to hire you, and those 6 subjects that were there are these kind of 6 subjects, right? So you have different kinds of subjects that are there, and these are the grades. And let's say I'm hiring for a marketing role. Do you really think I'm going to worry about your grade in operations or in finance to hire you for marketing? The answer is no, I'm not going to really worry about it. What I will care about is your capability in marketing, right? So now I'm using grades as a reference for capability, right? Grades are not exactly representative of capability. But in my example, you have to assume that a grade is an accurate representation of capability, right? Because then this is what makes sense. So let's say, I come on campus and you have a grade in A in marketing, and I hire you, right? And I hire, let's say, across the country, 300 people like you I've hired in marketing, right? Now, let's say 5 years have passed, yeah? And after those 5 years, I ask you, how will the average if I were to map out the capability of different people on a simple graph, how would that graph look like? Well, it would look something like a normal curve, right? Where most people will have average capability. So about 68%, more than 2/3 of people will have average capability. And some people will have much higher than average capability, and some people will have much less than average capability, right? This is how a normal graph looks like. Some of you would have read this in probability. This is how life looks like for the most part. Yeah. Now here's my question to you, and this I'm going to put up as a poll question. Yeah. Let's say that you are that person who has exactly average capability. Yeah. Are you going to be making average money, or are you going to be making more than average money, or are you going to be making less than average money? That person in the middle, how much money does that person really make? Do they make average money, more than average, or less than average, if they have exactly average capability? The results are in this time, and I can tell you that the result are all 3 options have gotten 33% responses, right? So 1/3 to each. And this is really at the heart of what people don't understand, right? Because I didn't understand it when I was in college as well. The truth is that the person in the middle will not make average money. They will not make more than average. They will certainly make less than average money. If you are that person, you will make less than average money if you have average capability. The reason for that can be understood as follows. Yeah. So let's say that you are the person with the average capability. You come up to me, 5 years you worked with me, and you say, Varun, I think that I've done really well in the last 5 years. You have promoted me in these last 5 years. Therefore, I think I should be given a little more money considering the output that I'm delivering you. So I want you to increase my salary, right? Now, you're the person with the average capability. How do you think I'm going to respond? How do you think any line manager is going to respond? They're going to hear you out, and they're going to have kind words to offer, and they're going to show you the growth of the company and the growth that you can have. But net, they're unlikely to increase your salary if you were to ask. The reason is that your salary, even if you leave the company, while it will be a little bit of a pain to replace it, you are the easiest person to replace because you are exactly in the middle of the curve. There are more people with your capability than any other capability in the graph. Even people with really less capability are sometimes difficult to replace, right? Because very few people are as bad. But if you're in the middle, it's a really bad place to be because you can easily be replaced. You're the easiest person to replace, right? And so I might really like you as an individual, but if I look at it from a business point of view, it's not much of a loss if you leave. Now take your friend, take your friend who's in the top 2%. If that person were to come up to me and say that, Varun, I would like you to raise my salary because I think that I've been doing a really good job and I think that I deserve more. What I'm going to think, really honestly, what I'm going to think is, oh damn, I'm doing a really, really bad job as a manager. Because if I'm a good manager, then I would have already raised the salary of this individual even before he or she would have asked me for it. Because if I'm a good line manager, I would have figured that this person is certainly above average, substantially above average. It will be very hard to replace this person because there are few people that exist with that kind of capability. And so therefore it is much more in my interest that I don't lose this person and I give disproportionate salary to this person such that they don't even think about leaving, right? That's the way life works. The people at the end tend to get the maximum amount of money, right? And it's true in almost any business, right? The largest businesses are far, far higher than the businesses in the middle, right? The richest people are far, far higher than the average person, right? That's how life tends to work in, right? And if you are, sitting in college, really, the way you should look at this graph is to identify that 2% zone as a zone of freedom. Because if you are in that 2% capability, then you have immense flexibility to do whatever it is that you want to do, right? If money matters a lot to you, then that's something that this zone will bring to you, disproportionately bring to you. If money is not what drives you, you still need money to survive, right? And so when you get to that capability, you can really get a lot of you can really sort of earn for a little bit and get a lot of time for yourself, right? And so therefore think about it this way. People get better as they get older from a job function point of view because they acquire more knowledge, experience, networks, which are very important when you work. And so some people get really good at the age of 35. Some people get at the age of 45. Some people get at the age of 55, right? And very good being represented by in that top 2%. Here's the thing. If you get in the top 2% at the age of 35, then your life will be very different than if you get it at the age of 55. Because the earlier you get it, the more time you will have in your life in order to really lead it the way you want to lead it, right? And so therefore, the myth that I showed you is patently false, right? It is not true that you're going to make average salary. Another myth that I'm going to break down for you is, if you want to maximize money in your career, don't just simply consider the average salary of that career, right? Data science is such a big thing. Don't take data science only because you think that a lot of data science professionals are making a lot of money. You want to consider the fact that a lot of people make money in that zone, and that's an important parameter, no doubt, but you must also consider the likelihood of you becoming highly capable in that career, right? Because if you can become highly capable very quickly in that career, then that career could really sort of, pay off big dividends for you. The final thing I'm going to address to you is a question that I got. It's a question that I always get when I go to campuses. It is, how do I figure out what is the career that really is for me, right? And to that extent, let me ask you this poll question. In fact, let me not put the poll question to you, because really I think that in your heart I think you already know the answer, but I'm going to state it out in any case, right? If you don't know what career or what passion you want to pursue, it's completely fine. There is no right time to discover it. However, having said that, you must put in an effort in order to discover it, right? Because while there is no right time, the earlier you can do it, the more benefits you can get from it. Yeah. And so therefore, the point I'm going to make to you is this, that you need to use your time right now in order to get the right kind of experiences, diverse kind of experiences, such that you know that you're getting someplace, right? If you think, for example, that marketing is a career for you, but you're not sure, please go ahead and start working in marketing, start talking to marketeers, start figuring out and reading about it. And as you do it, you will figure out if that is a career for you, right? It might be there that you like marketing, but not all aspects of marketing, some very specific aspects of marketing, right? Maybe content is something which is there for you, right? Or maybe analytics is there for you, or maybe digital is there for you, maybe sales is there for you, maybe business development is there for you. There are a whole host of things which are related to marketing but not exactly there, right? Or it's not really marketing, but it is persuasion that really sort of drives you. And so you could sort of combine that passion with something else and come up with something else altogether, right? So therefore, while there is no right time to discover something, you must start to make an effort in order to do things, in order to find out more. Yeah. Expressed better, there is a quote that is attributed to Eisenhower, the great American president and general, World War II general, who said that plans are nothing, planning is everything, right? And it's a little complicated to understand that initially, because what does that mean? What he was trying to say is that the plan that you build for yourself right now is not going to be actualized, because life will throw out a lot more variety and a lot more complexity at you. That does not, however, mean that you don't start planning, right? Because the very act of planning helps you understand a little bit better, and you get a little bit better at the planning activity every day of your life, right? And so there is great returns on making a plan and trying to stick to a plan, even though the truth is that very plan that you make right now at your age will likely not be the final output, but it will be a step towards the right path. All right, so then let's start the questions. All right, Bhavya asks, is it necessary to be academically brilliant for an MBA? So from a technical point of view, you don't need to be, but MBA programs prefer students with good academic scores. The reason that they prefer it is because academics, if you're good at academics, that means that you're able to sort of have a certain level of commitment, which is necessary in an MBA program. What I mean by that is this: like, imagine all your life there have been whole host of subjects. English has nothing to do with science, has nothing to do with math. I mean, science has something to do, but let's say English has nothing to do with history, for example, right? And so therefore, what you will find is that in your life, you're exposed to a lot of subjects. A lot of those subjects are frankly boring to you. Some people like math, some people like English, some people like something, right? And so if you have a good academic score, that just means that even in the subjects that bored you, you had enough discipline and commitment to do something about them. That's why MBA programs like good academic scores. While commitment and discipline are something which you can sort of demonstrate in other ways as well, MBA programs take the very conventional view that is the way to show it, right? I know personally a lot of people who in later life became very committed and disciplined, but who in their earlier life did not have good academic scores, did not sort of have that kind of thing. But once they liked something, they really did that very well. That, I think, is the best way to predict success, that when you like something, how well you do it and how passionately you do it. But that's not how the MBA programs select their students, which is why it helps if you have a good academic score. Okay. Parami's asked, should you go for MAP or you should go for digital marketing course? In MAP, you'll be learning digital marketing as well. So the only difference is that most digital marketing courses only talk about the tools, whereas because we run the best marketing programs in the country, I can tell you that first you need to understand core marketing before you can get into digital marketing, right? And so therefore that's the difference. You first learn core marketing, then you learn digital marketing. But you learn everything in digital that there is to learn, to be honest, Paramveer, in the MAP program. Sankalp has asked a question: how is the product market fit calculated, and how to find whether product has a market? Is market fit the right term? So product market fit essentially is relevant in the world of startups, where a startup's job is to come up with a new product or a new service that did not exist before. Product market fit refers to when that product starts to get wide acceptance. So the way you get product market fit is not at the start, but at a certain point in the development journey. When you're trying to build a product for the first time, you build it for a very small niche audience, and then once you sort of build it for a niche audience, and as the niche audience starts to really adopt your product, your goal is to make that product accessible and relevant for a wider audience. Sometimes you have to modify that product. Sometimes you just have to take that product out in the existing state to a wider audience. Once a wider audience starts to accept your product and you see a lot of growth happening, that is called product market fit. And every startup is in the search of product market fit. Yeah. Very few startups achieve that. A lot of funded startups don't have product market fit. Yeah. And so it's a function of growth and how you go about it. It's a very good question, but I hope you get the sense of it. All right, Shrida, how could we follow you? You can follow me on LinkedIn. You can follow me on Facebook, whatever is the preferred platform for you. I write there, I publish videos there, and whatever something next is coming up, you'll be able to see it on that. The Kraftshala pages also typically share that, so you can also follow the Kraftshala pages, and you can sort of get information from not just me but other people as well. All right, guys, it was fun interacting with you guys. Hope you guys do really well in your careers. Take care.